Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. And thank you so much for that card. I got an appreciation card. Many of you signed that, and it's been very encouraging to me. So thank you. Did any of you notice, not just today, but throughout your time attending church, that when you come to church on a Sunday morning, you see people with these huge smiles? Sunday smiles. A Sunday smile is not just a friendly smile. It makes a statement. It's almost as if there's an unseen power that pushes us, propels us to be overly friendly on a Sunday morning at church. To declare that everything is good, even when it's not. Praise the Lord. God is good all the time. God is in control. Sometimes these words are used like cliches, spoken too easily, almost glibly, and they lose some of their power. A person who has gone through very deep trials and sufferings and comes out on the other side and says, God is good, I can testify, has a power that a Sunday morning smile does not have. When I was a young kid, I thought church was the happiest place on earth. People were always so nice and friendly. I didn't know about Disney World, of course. But later, I started wondering if it was real. What was reality like for all the people with their Sunday smiles? And if this is not their everyday reality, then why do this on a Sunday? Well, I think there are two basic reasons, both of them cultural. The one secular and the other Christian. The secular culture and the Christian culture. Some of you will be too young to know about this, but many of you will be old enough to know about Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote this book called The Power of Positive Thinking. He says you can change your thoughts, and through that you can change the world. Your responsibility is to change your own thoughts. And as you change your thoughts, you will change the world around you. There is a power when you think positively. This was marketed as a practical guide to mastering the problems of everyday living. It came out in 1952. One of the first really important self-help books that many people gravitated towards. A summary says, this book will teach you that the roots of success lie in the mind and teach you how to believe in yourself, break the habit of worrying, and take control of your life by taking control of your thoughts and changing your attitude. So if you can change your thoughts and your attitude, your life will change. Well, one of the great movies of our time is What About Bob? Bob is a man with many problems, and he sees a psychiatrist or psychologist, and he shares his problems and he tries to find solutions to everything that hassles him in life. It says Bob is a special kind of friend, the kind that drives you crazy. Because everything is a problem for Bob. He doesn't want to touch anything that everyone else has touched, so he walks with a handkerchief on his hand. When he needs to press the button for the elevator, he needs to use that. When he goes to the front door, he has to use that. He doesn't want to breathe in fumes from outside, so he stays home. Everything is a problem for Bob, and so he has his mantra every morning when he gets up. He says, I feel good, I feel great, I feel wonderful. I feel good, I feel great, I feel wonderful. I feel good. And he keeps saying that over and over again because it's the power of positive thinking, right? When you declare this every morning about yourself, it has to become true. That's what Norman Vincent Peale said. Change your thoughts, change your attitude, declare this, and your life is going to change. The problem, of course, as we all know, is that all this positive thinking is not actually real. It is an attempt to change your reality by changing your attitude. But here's the thing. Your attitude doesn't always change your reality. Reality is what it is. Yes, a better attitude might help you to deal with reality better, but it's not going to change the reality. In fact, there could be a problem with this because more harm can be done than good in certain situations. They did quite a few studies on this. And experts believe that bombarding people with these bromides and self-help books that implicitly say that they are at fault for not being happy may be a factor in the rise of depression rates in the United States. So there's an implicit other side of the coin. If you're not happy and it's not going great with you, then that's your fault. Because you should be changing your thoughts and your attitude, and that would change your reality, and things will go well for you. You see what's happening is even though you are struggling, and even though you're really taking strain, the responsibility now comes upon you to change all of that. In recent years, critics have become concerned that this simplistic form of positive psychology can do more harm than good. It's called the tyranny of the positive attitude, says Barbara Held, a psychology professor at Bowdoin College. She says, our culture has little tolerance for those who can't smile and look on the bright side in the face of adversity. Even in cases of profound loss, Held says, people are supposed to get over their sadness within weeks, if not sooner. This tyranny of positive attitude has two components. First, you feel bad about whatever pain has come your way. Then you are made to feel guilty or defective if you can't be grateful for what you do have and move forward or focus on the positives. This is the double punch. Not only do you feel bad about what's happened, but now you feel bad because you can't move forward and see the good in it. And it's a second punch which does the most serious damage. This is a cultural reason why we have the Sunday smiles. Everything is great. The secular cultural reason. But we also have a Christian cultural reason. You see, people believe that the Bible teaches us to do this. That Christians have the power to speak things into existence. So we have to say we are good and God is good because it demonstrates faith. And faith will turn into reality. And then our world will change. The Word of Faith movement was very strong about this. Speaking out these words, and as you do so, they will turn into reality. The only problem with that, of course, is that we as human beings don't have the same power that God has. And God is the only one that can speak things into existence. Things that do not exist, when God speaks through His Word, they become into reality. But human beings don't have that same ability. Not only that, but in this kind of thinking, the word that you speak becomes a container that holds the faith that will then flower and become the reality. But the faith is not in that word that is spoken. The faith is in your heart. The trust in your heart that God cares for you, that He knows you by name, that He understands what you go through every day of your life. and that He cares about you so deeply that He would send His own Son to come and die on the cross for your sake. So for various reasons then, we shy away from anything that does not show a victorious, triumphant Christian life. But the Scriptures don't shy away from that lament. In Ecclesiastes, we read, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance." So often, we are not good at discerning the times. So often, we always want it to be a time of dancing and never a time of mourning. So often, we only want it to be a time of laughing and not a time of weeping. But real wisdom is in this. It's in discerning the times, in knowing what time it is. If someone lives today on this planet and does not lament or weep or grieve because of COVID, there's something wrong. If we look at the television screens or our computer screens and we see the images that come from Afghanistan and the Kabul airport and what's happening in that country, and we do not feel sad, and we do not grieve, and we do not weep because of that, then there's something wrong. Then we've lost the connection to being human, because being human means we feel all these emotions. In the New Testament, James writes this. He says, "Come near to God, and He will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom." Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Why double-minded? Because one part of your mind is set on Christ, and the other part of your mind is set on sin. Double-minded. Not fully set on Christ, not fully set on sin, but set on both at the same time. What are you supposed to do? Well, what James is saying is realize your situation, realize the reality and the wisdom of the reality that you're in, and come and grieve and mourn and wail because of the situation that you're in. And as you do so, God will come near to you, because God is a God of reality. And when you are real before Him, you will connect with God, because He will become real to you. You know why some people's Christianity is this deep? It's because they always walk around with Sunday smiles. They never enter into that real place where you become vulnerable before God and where you open up your heart and share the sadness that is within you. Well, I'm going to come to David now, because David, I think, shows us a little bit of lamenting and then some of the dangers involved in that. We read, of course, now in 2 Samuel chapter 18, we read of the time that David was protected, and Absalom, his son's rebel army, was defeated. And one of the messengers came running to David with this news. The Cushite, he arrived and he said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has vindicated you today by delivering you from the hand of all who rose up against you." This is good news. You've been delivered. Those who rose up against you, the rebels, have been defeated. But see what David does. Even though he hears the good news, he has a personal connection to what went on because his son, Absalom, was the one that rebelled against him. The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" And the Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." Very wise answer. He knew his own head could be on the chopping block, but he also had to speak the truth. And so when he delivers the news in this way that Absalom has died, David instantly knew what he was saying. The king was shaken. He went up to the room above the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." The deep grief that he feels, I think, has been felt by some people in our community when you have a child that dies. The grief that he feels goes over into a lament. The sadness of what has happened. The wishing it was rather him than his son. Rather me than you, Absalom. The personal grief is what David feels in this situation. But what happens when he feels that grief? And this is one of the issues that we face. When we lament, when we feel the sadness about a situation, that lament and that sadness can go in two different ways. It can go over into grumbling, or it can become selfish grief. So when we feel the grief of a situation, we feel the sadness, and we lament about a situation, if we go then and we blame God, or we blame someone else, or we grumble against him for allowing that, or for causing that, we are moving straight into sin territory. The Israelites in the wilderness came upon this when they grumbled against God. And they said, "God, why did you even bring us out of Egypt? Just to come and die here in the wilderness? Was that your plan?" And because they grumbled against him, God judged them for that. But the pendulum can swing to the other side, where instead of grumbling against God or against someone else, we can internalize everything and become selfish in our grief. That it's all just about me, and I forget about everyone around me. This is what happens to David. Joab, of course, the general of David's army, was told, "The king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." And for the whole army, the victory that day was turned into mourning. Because on that day, the troops heard it said, "The king is grieving for his son." The army who fought so hard, who put their own lives at risk on David's behalf, who went out and battled for him, their victory that they won, and remember, they were in a minority, they were facing a great majority against them. But the victory that they had won has now been turned upside down, and it felt like a loss. They were mourning because they were told the king was not pleased with what you did. In fact, the king is grieving for his son, for the enemy. The one that you were fighting against, the king is grieving for that person. So what does Joab do? Well, the men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The king covered his face and cried aloud, "Oh, my son, Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son!" Can you see how selfish he goes into his grief? This is the big problem that we have, people, is when we grieve, and we all go through times of grief, if we become too selfish, too inward focused, we don't open ourselves to listen to others around us, we are going to sink deeper and deeper into the spiral of depression. But Joab went into the house to the king and he said, "Today you have humiliated all your men who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines." Joab goes straight to David, and this is a come to Jesus meeting. Have you ever been in a come to Jesus meeting? When your parents call you in and they lay it all on the line, or when the headmaster of the school calls you in, or your boss at work and he's ready to fire you, things are very serious. This is what's happening. Joab has a come to Jesus meeting with King David. Even though he's the king, Joab can realize that David is selfish in his grief and no one is being helped by that. So he goes in to make the situation better. He says, "You love those who hate you and hate those who love you." Upside down, David. You're supposed to love those who love you and supposed to hate those who hate you according to Leviticus, but you're doing the other way around. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. King David, you are sending a signal in your selfish grief. Yes, we understand that you are grieving. Yes, we understand that you are a father and you've lost a son. But in that selfish grief of yours, everyone is affected by what you're doing. And you are sending a signal to everyone that they don't matter to you. He says, "I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead." Now, how do you respond to a come to Jesus meeting like this? When you are being outed, when you are being spoken to directly like this and you know that you're in the wrong, do you have the wisdom to know the time that you're in? Do you have the wisdom to know how to react? Joab says to him, "Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now." So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told the king is sitting in the gateway, they all came before him. He responded in the right way. Put his own personal grief, his own selfish grief aside for the moment and attend to his people and do what a king is supposed to do as best he could at that time. And the men came to him. They forgave him. They were loyal to David. They were willing to fight for him. And he was their king. So we see after they came to him, everything got right again. Everything became well again. David was invited to come back to Jerusalem, and he went back and he became king again of Judah and Jerusalem. We'll talk more about that next week as we come to this. But here's the thing I want you to take home with you this morning. It is not wrong to lament. It is not wrong to grieve. There are times when it is right for us to grieve, to mourn, and to wail. When we see the sadness around us, when we experience terrible loss. In fact, if we don't do that, it will show that we are not in touch with reality. But if we see the sadness that God sees and we share that with Him, it is going to show that yes, we are in touch with reality, we are in touch with ourselves as human beings, and we're in touch with our God, who feels the same way. Lament is good, but it should not become grumbling, and it should not become selfish grief. So when we lament, we have to lament in the presence of God. We bring our grief before Him. We invite Christ to be part of our lives in the grief that we feel and in the sad and difficult situation that we have to deal with. And as we are in that place of lament, in that place of grieving, God will meet us. I'm not talking about a change like that. Oh, I was sad for about 5 minutes, but now I feel great again. No. This could be a long period, a period of lament and grief. But there will come a time when those feelings will lift from you. The weeping is for a night, but joy comes in the morning. That night could be a long night, but there will be joy in the morning. God will meet you where you are in your lament and in your grief and in your sadness. And He will speak tenderly to you. He is the good shepherd. And you and I, we are the sheep of His pasture. We see Jesus comes and laments over Jerusalem. He says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it, how often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. Behold, your house is forsaken, and I tell you, you will not see me until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it." And Jesus, speaking this, knows that He is one of those prophets who will be killed in Jerusalem. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings? Can you see the sadness, the lament of Jesus about what could have been, what should have been, but did not happen? Did not happen because Jerusalem was not willing. The unwillingness was not on the part of Christ. It was on the part of Jerusalem, the people. But Jesus laments. And in that lament of His, He is seeing the reality for what it is. And He's dealing with that reality. The Apostle Paul writes to the Thessalonians. He says, "Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope." Do not grieve like the rest of mankind. The rest of mankind, those who are not Christians, they have no hope. Don't grieve like them. Their grief is a final grief. But your grief, your lament, will have a seed of hope in it. He says, "For we believe that Jesus died and rose again. And so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in Him." There will be life after this life through Jesus. You see, that's the hope, the seed of hope that is in our lament and our grief. Even though now, for a little while, we will suffer trouble. Even now, though now, for a little while, we will suffer hardships and difficulties. In those hardships and difficulties, in that lament that we have, in that grief that we feel, that sadness, there is a seed of hope. Because Jesus Christ was raised from the dead. Because we know that happened, we have that seed of hope in us. So brothers and sisters, I want to give you permission to lament. Don't think because I'm a Christian I shouldn't be doing this. No, because you are a Christian you should be doing this. You should be doing the same thing that Jesus did and the same thing that James and Paul was talking about. That's what we should be doing as Christians. But let us not lament or grieve as the world does. But as we bring our sadness before God, as we open our hearts and disclose ourselves and become real to Him and He becomes real to us, in that let us have the reality of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That hope that is within us. Brothers and sisters, there are many things that happen in this life that causes us grief and sadness and brings us to a place where we can lament before God. That's a fact. But it's also a fact that the Jesus who died on the cross was raised again 3 days later and appeared to many people, giving many convincing proofs that He is alive. And it's also a fact that that Jesus will come again. And you and I will be with Him forever and ever. Let me pray. Worship team, would you come up? Father God, this morning as we come to this passage and we see David's grief and his lament over his son that he lost, we see the danger of lament and grief becoming selfish. And we don't want to do that. We also know and understand from history that lament and grief can turn into grumbling. We also don't want to do that. But we want to lament like Jesus did. We want to be sad over the things that you are sad about. And we want to bring the griefs and the sadness that we feel before you into your presence. And we want to experience your presence with us even as we are real and present to you. And I pray, Lord, that as we do that, that the seed of hope in us would germinate and grow. And from our lament would come the hope that is real and is in you. Pray your blessing upon us in the name of that Jesus Christ who rose from the dead. Amen.